Fractal Design has recently refreshed its Meshify series of cases, and I've got a couple of the different models available here, and we're going to look at them today. Now, I personally don't have a long history with Fractal Design cases. The first time I ever actually worked with one was in the Meshify C, and that case, while it promoted airflow, had its share of problems, and those problems have largely been rectified by the revisions to the Meshify lineup. The Meshify lineup was first revised with the S series of cases, which came out a couple of years ago. But now Fractal has once again refreshed these cases and has made it easier than ever to actually build in them. So I have here on the table both the standard Meshify 2 and the Meshify 2 XL. We're going to focus mostly on the Meshify 2. I will be doing a rebuild of my current system in the XL, and I will give build thoughts on that then. So for now, we're just going to focus in on this guy here, which is the Meshify 2. In terms of actual differences between the two, there's mostly just size differences. I'm going to take a look down here. I don't have these memorized, so my apologies. So the Meshify 2 comes in at 542 millimeters long, 240 millimeters wide, and 474 meters high. The XL version is 600 millimeters long, 240 millimeters wide, so the same width, and 566 millimeters high. So again, longer, wider, and that goes for a lot of the different things. So more differences between the two. The XL can support up to 480 millimeter radiators in the top and in the front, as well as 280 in the bottom, a 120 in the rear. The Meshify 2, the normal edition, will support a top rad of 420 millimeters, a bottom rad of up to 280, and a front of up to 360. So you lose a little bit in the front and the top, and the same 120 millimeter in the rear. Functionally, though, these cases are fairly the same. Again, size is the biggest difference. The tooling is the same. The way they open up is the same. The way they disassemble is the same. So the only other thing you get in the XL that you don't get in the standard Meshify 2 is you get an additional hard drive sled that is installed in the bottom for 2 total sleds, which can hold 4 3.5-inch drives or 2.5-inch drives. The standard Meshify only includes one of those. Now, Fractal does list a number of different lengths on here for power supplies and other such things, but really what you're going to run into is if you're using the power supply mount in the bottom, you're going to run into space constrictions here pretty quickly. The other thing I find hysterical, this is the case accessory box for the Meshify 2 XL. This is the accessory box for the standard Meshify, just something that I found really interesting. So again, the size difference is simply because the standard Meshify 2 has 4 additional hard drive sleds in the side of this box. The Meshify 2 XL has 2. So that's really the main difference here and why these are so much bigger. So as I previously mentioned, we're going to focus in on the regular Meshify 2 as, again, they are virtually identical on how they are constructed. So the first thing that I think is really nice is the toolless way of opening these things. So on the end of each side of the case, there's a little tab that you just push away, and the tempered glass side panel just slides right off. Now, there is nothing to catch the glass as it falls, so make sure you've got a secure hold on it, and the rear panel does the same thing. Just pops off. There's no sound dampening material anywhere in this case. This is strictly an airflow case, and that is as easy as it gets when it comes to getting into the interior of the Meshify 2. Now, for those of you who worked with the Meshify C, you might remember this front mesh panel being one of the things that they really highlighted. This was one of the selling points, the mesh front for airflow. Now, anybody who actually did work with those cases remembers how difficult getting that panel off was, and the fact that the front IO, the top IO, which is right here, was attached to that front panel. What this meant was as you went to work in this case, if you needed to access the front fans, you had this panel kind of dangling all over the place. You don't really need to do that anymore because Fractal has simply done something that I think is really nice and put this panel on a hinge. Now, this is as far as it goes, and this is one of the problems with this system in that you can't get this front filter out. It's just kind of stuck there. You actually have to pop this off to remove it. Now, one of the big improvements that they've made over the course of revising this case is they got rid of that fabric mesh that was inside of the Meshify C and have replaced it with a more traditional nylon filter. Much easier to remove, much easier to clean. This panel does just pop off like so, and then you can just pull the filter out. Now, the filter doesn't make that much of a difference from what I've seen from other reviews of this case. You don't have to use it if you don't want to, but it is there and it does line up with the design that is clearly visible on the inside of this panel. So as you separate it, you can come pull it all the way out, and then it slides back in fairly easily, clips into place. But pulling that off gives you full access to the front of this case, which as you can see right there. They do come with two 140 millimeter fans pre-installed in the front, and there is a 140 millimeter fan installed in the back. That's a nice thing there. The XL edition, on the other hand, only comes with one in the front and one in the rear, but I think it's generally assumed that people who are buying that case are going to be using their own fan, so not that big of a deal. But if you do need to pop this off, it does come off. It takes a little bit of force, but especially in the top here, for whatever reason, this is really stuck on. There we go. But this front panel does pop off. It's just held in by plastic tabs, and there is a fully exposed front panel. But again, you don't need to do that to get to these fans. You can just open up the door. As is often the case with a Fractal case, full filter along the bottom of the case that extends, all that can be pulled out from the front. Additionally, if you are moving or adjusting things on this case, the filter needs to be gone. There are rails underneath. Those are for the fans, as well as for the included hard drive bracket. And if that wasn't enough for you, well, this top panel also pops off. And as you see, fully white top mesh, which is a nice thing. I wish they would have done that with the front mesh. And another filter right in here that just clicks out. If you're going to be using exhaust in the top, though, you can go ahead and leave that out. And now you have a fully exposed case. So one thing I wish they would have done is I wish they would have made the motherboard tray and the power supply shroud white as well. I think that would have been a much nicer look, would have reflected the any RGB that you would put in here, but that is not the case. Additionally, like a lot of the Fractal cases, this panel right here can be moved to the front of the chassis. That's mostly if you're going to be setting up a hard drive system, which then again, you can mount the hard drives to the back of this. Turning the case around to show you the back side of it, you have your traditional Velcro straps that Fractal has, grommets in a number of key places. And then they have this. This is a little bracket this little tab that just pulls out that shows you the power supply area. Now, you cannot install the power supply through the side. You have to go through the rear of the case. There is a removable bracket here that you install the power supply to and then slide it in. And as you might be able to see, it's a little dark, but there is the hard drive tray that is included in here. It is on rails. It can be slid and repositioned in a number of places, depending on what you're putting in here, radiator wise and or fans, because you can again mount 120s or 140s in the bottom of this case. You have your mounts for your SSDs. Additionally, for storage, you can mount a drive to this piece right here on the back that can be repositioned. Again, you do have to pop this plastic piece out in order to do that. Speaking of plastic pieces, one more thing on the front, on the power supply shroud. These are toolless covers that can be removed if you are going to be installing water cooling accessories. They just kind of pop out. And a little bit of force, you can get this one. And then you have access to this one as well. So again, toolless, they just kind of slot in and then they snap into place. There are little slots for them to go into, and that is how that works. Again, it sounds really violent, but the reality is that it's not. So that's a look at the inside. Now there's one more thing that I think is worth noting about this case that I think is really cool. Both the Meshify 2 and the Meshify 2 XL have this. I believe the Compact, which just came out, has a modified version of it. That is this part right up here. So most of the time when you are building inside of a system, it's nice to have a removable tray for your radiator or for your fans to get at so that you can install them much easier. It also helps in plugging in certain connectors at the top of the case, like your 8-pin EPS or any fans that you might be plugging in, RGB headers and such. But Fractal has gone one step further, and with a couple of screws, one on the right side here, I'm using fixed focus today, so if things aren't quite focused, that's because I don't feel like dealing with the finicky autofocus. Now with those two screws removed, this entire tray comes off, and now you've got something where you can just mount your radiators, your fans, but also have real easy access to the top of the case. I'm trying to point this to the light so you can kind of see better, and much easier ability to get to any wires. This is particularly useful if you're installing an AIO or if you installed your radiator and your fans and you went, oh, I forgot to plug in my EPS. You can just pop this thing off, kind of let it sit and get everything plugged in. And I am all for companies who do ease of access stuff. And this is one of the best systems I've seen in quite some time. There is at the top as well, right here, there's a fill port for custom loops. There is no drain port. That was something I was kind of disappointed in, but it does not exist on this case. So if you are looking to do a custom loop, you're going to have to come up with your own solution. And again, I do wish Fractal would have made more of the interior pieces white, but they did not do that. So that's going to be kind of one of the things that I think people are either going to like or not like about this, but that is such the way it is. Now for IO, I'll give a better shot of this, but you have your pretty typical stuff. You have you can't even see because it's marked on the top panel, but you have a headphone, microphone, USB Type-C, power, reset, and then two USB 3.0. Pretty standard stuff at this point in time. And beyond that, I think that about covers the interior. Again, the XL is pretty much the same. They have a few more options for the grommets, and obviously with it being longer and a little bit taller, you have a little bit more of an option for water cooling. Beyond that though, they are pretty identical, so building in either one should be about the same experience. Sometimes you just gotta build in it to really have an understanding of what the case is like, so let's go ahead and put a build in here. I'll have some final thoughts after done doing that. Before I get on to the actual build, one thing I forgot to mention, we do have a fan hub in the top of this. It's SATA powered. Here is your SATA cable. You've got your 3-pin over here, you've got 6 of those, and then you've got a trio of 4-pin connectors that you can go ahead and utilize and then connect to your motherboard. So Fractal did include that in this case. I believe the XL has one as well, but I could be wrong. In any case, let's get on to the build. All right, so there we have it. This is the build in its pretty much finished form. Again, these are parts from my nephew's upcoming build. So the graphics card is my own. We're not going to go over all the parts that I used into this. Fans are ramping up and down like nuts too. I don't know if that'll pick up on camera, but as I thought, building in this case is as easy as I thought it was going to be. The ability to take that top mount off and kind of move it around and get in there is a lifesaver, especially if you're trying to get to the upper plugs like the 8-pin EPS, the fan header, and the RGB header in this case. They're tucked behind the AIO, so being able to get up in there and actually do something about it is pretty nice. So it's one of my favorite features about this particular case. First time using the EK Elite AIO, and it takes a little bit getting used to, but ultimately I didn't have too much trouble. The nice thing about that is it comes with 3 extra fans because it's meant for push-pull, but decided to go ahead and throw those into the front. Left the rear fan as it is for now. This is going to be the case that my daughter will be switching over to, so I look forward to actually putting her refreshed build. She'll be getting my 8700K system when I move on to Ryzen. But yeah, there were really no major hiccups. The case is well laid out. There's a lot of room. There's a lot of just functionality in here. As you see, there's still a ton of space in here. You can fit a pretty large graphics card in there. You could even probably get away with a push-pull configuration in the front here if you wanted to. Not really something that I would try to do in the top because again, this AIO is coming down just above the top of the memory. It would clear because of it being offset, but again, you'd be obstructing it and already seeing some obstruction on the upper half of the board anyway. Again, still wish that this hinge door would open more. The fact that it doesn't is still kind of a bummer, but at the end of the day, it's a minor thing. It doesn't really impact anything too terribly much. It's just a minor little nuisance. But that's about it. So that's a look at the Fractal Design Meshify 2. Again, I will be doing a rebuild of my system in the XL, and if I notice anything different there, particularly with using a custom loop, I will be sure to make note of it during that actual build. Noticeably improved over the Meshify C in every aspect. There's a lot more functionality built into it. It's easier to get into. The fact that the mesh front is actually more breathable is a big plus. The accessibility is a big plus. The fact that you can get in and out, the cable management is nice in the back. I didn't really cable manage the cable, so I'm not going to show that because this is going to get torn down. All in all, not too bad. Gotta say, like what Fractal did with this, and I look forward to using this in my daughter's build, and I look forward to building in the XL version in my own system coming soon. So that's going to do it for this video. Let me know what you thought down in the comments below. Have you used a Fractal case before? Have you been thinking about a Fractal case? Let me know, and I will be sure to respond whenever I can. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.